I realized we weren't living. We were just existing to pay off debt. One day, I sat down and looked back at my life, and I suddenly realized something terrifying. I was married. I had a husband. I had a family. But our life didn't look like a normal family. We weren't living. We were simply existing to pay off debt. And the more truths I discovered, the more I realized that the burden I was carrying was far heavier than I had ever imagined. After I discovered the debt reminder messages on my husband's phone, I began to feel uneasy. I'm not the type of person who likes to control or spy on others, but the feeling in my heart at that moment wouldn't allow me to pretend that nothing was wrong. That night, as the numbers from those messages kept repeating in my head, I decided to ask my husband directly. I said, "Do you still owe money somewhere else?" My husband stayed silent. That silence lasted only a few seconds, but to me it felt like a very long time. Finally, he sighed. Then he said, "Yes, I borrowed from two more places." My heart sank. I asked, "How much?" He replied, "Not that much." But at that moment, the number didn't really matter anymore. What mattered was why I knew nothing about it. He said one of the loans was to finish building the house in his hometown for his parents. At first, he planned to borrow only 300 million Vietnamese dongs. But during construction, many extra expenses appeared. Painting, furniture, doors, roofing. So he borrowed another loan. What surprised me the most was that even his parents didn't know he had taken this additional loan. He said he didn't want them to worry. I listened and stayed silent. Part of me felt he was a responsible son, but another part of me felt something was wrong. Because when he decided to borrow more money, he didn't tell me either. Even though at that time, I was already his wife. But what truly shocked me was the second loan. I asked, "What about the other loan?" He answered calmly, "I bought a laptop for my younger sister." I thought I had misheard. So I asked again, "How much?" He said, "About 12 million VN." I said nothing. Not because 12 million was a huge amount, but because I began to realize something. In my husband's life, it seemed like everyone was important, except his wife. But the story didn't end there. One day, while checking our spending records, I discovered that a certain amount of money was transferred every month. I asked, "What is this 2 million transfer?" He answered, "I send it to my sister for living expenses." I looked up at him. "Every month?" He nodded. "Yes." I asked, "For how long?" He said, "For quite a while." At that moment, my heart started to feel heavy. Not because I hated my sister-in-law, and not because I didn't want to help his family, but I started to feel like everything had gone beyond a reasonable limit. One evening, after recalculating all of our household expenses, I told him something, very calmly. I said, "Then you should also send my sister 2 million every month to make things fair." He looked at me. Then he stayed silent. Both of us understood one thing. That was impossible. Because even with a combined income of 60 million Vietnamese dongs per month, we were still struggling to survive. Rent, living expenses, debt payments, money sent back to his hometown. When everything was added together, we had almost nothing left. I started to feel like my marriage had become a machine for making money. Every morning we woke up and went to work. At the end of the month we received our salaries. Then we sent the money to pay off debt, and waited for the next month. No future plans, no savings, no dreams. Some nights I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. I kept asking myself, why did my life turn out like this? I remembered the days when I was still single. Back then, my salary was only about 10 million Vietnamese dongs, but I could still live comfortably. I could buy clothes for my father. I could buy gifts for my mother. I could go out to eat with friends. Now my salary was 15 million, but I didn't dare buy myself a new dress. I didn't dare buy cosmetics. I didn't dare spend money on anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. Sometimes I felt like someone trying to swim in a very strong current, swimming, but never reaching the shore. Yet at that time, I kept trying to convince myself. I thought maybe we just needed a few more years. Once the debts were paid off, everything would get better. I thought this was just the difficult beginning of marriage. I thought I needed to be patient, to try harder, to understand my husband. But everything changed when I gave birth. When my son was born, I took maternity leave and went to my husband's hometown to stay after childbirth. I thought it would be a peaceful time. I thought life in the countryside would be simpler, but I never expected that time would make me see many things I had never known before. Things that made me start to understand where my husband's money had really been going and why. Even though we earned 60 million Vietnamese dongs every month, my life was always short of money. It wasn't until I went back to my husband's hometown after giving birth that I truly understood how his family spent money. The meals, the gatherings, the expenses I had never seen before. And when I saw all those things, I began to realize a truth that I could hardly believe.